globally. And so we have to keep that in mind, that it's not just the US. I'm personally interested in doing research here because I think this is kind of a really interesting epicenter. But I was trying to, earlier actually last year, I was applying for a Fulbright that I didn't get, but I was trying to go to Panama to do this similar project because social movements that are led by Afro descendants are happening all over the world, especially in Latin America, with a huge Black population that nobody seems to be able to acknowledge, and it's constantly erased. And the ways in which that's happening are absolutely incredible. I mean, the UN has declared this the decade of the Afro descendant, and we're like halfway through. And like, I mean, people are making moves quietly, but like, there's still so much work to be done.
Right, right. Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about that a little bit more because we, I'm how they enact their movements and what they're targeting. I think she brought up to me. She said, have you heard of Mahatma Gandhi? Right. And, I was like, yeah, I was like, hey, I've definitely heard about him. And I know MLK took a lot of his philosophy from Mahatma Gandhi as well, as far as civil disobedience. But kind of the context of our conversation was like, is in what ways will a movement be nonviolent? In what ways should it be nonviolent? And in what ways is almost the chaos justified? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, the chaos is almost completely reasonable. I mean, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. So I think one can
mhm,
expect chaos, one can expect violence. Violence begets violence. But I
right,
think that, like, when we look at the different histories, when we look at, because I mean, more slaves went to Latin America and the Caribbean than went anywhere else in the world. And so when we look at that, like when we look at Latin America as a comparison point, I think it's really interesting that we still see the ways in which discourse and the conversations around race have shaped the amount that
the
people can do, because you can't
yeah,
count,
yeah,
they weren't counting people in Latin America. They weren't counting people by race. They didn't have that data, so they couldn't even say how many Black people were existing. They couldn't decide to allocate resources to people in that way, etc. People didn't, I feel like, have a sense of like actually like working on that behalf until like now. Like more like over the years there have definitely been Afro descendant led movements, but I think now like
mhm,
things are kind of at a boiling point. And I felt really kind of non optimistic, like kind of pessimistic about it, because I'm like, we were doing this 3 years ago. Like, where were y'all in 2013?
yeah.
And it's like, it's the same. Like, like people are like, oh, this is the wake up call. And it's like, no, this has been
It's
happening
been here,
all
yeah.
along. This is nothing new.
And this
Um,
situation isn't different than any other situation that's been going on. So, like, what makes this the birth
I
point?
think I think what's happening that's special, and like that, because Angela, I was pessimistic until Angela Davis said we were in a unique moment, and I'm like, if Angela Davis thinks we're in a unique moment, she's been through it for long enough that like,
To know,
yeah,
right?
it's just where you must be unique. And I think what is unique about this present moment is that people are watching. I think with the pandemic, it's created a social opportunity that people have nothing else to do. People have nothing else
Or
to do
or
but watch.
lose.
Or
Yeah.
I mean, people that as well, but I think people that usually wouldn't be paying attention are finally paying attention. With their news feeds would usually be filled with like vacations and like, like even like I've heard like, NBA players are like not wanting to restart the season because it would be a distraction. And so
Mm,
like people
wow.
are finally
Interesting.
paying it, like things are canceled, like you're not vacations canceled, theme parks canceled, games canceled, sports, like
Interesting.
there's more focus now. People are like, oh, what's going on? Oh, this is going on? What?
Right.
All of this time? Nobody said anything. Why didn't you say anything? It's like we've been saying things for a
Yeah.
long time, y'all. And so
Beyonce
I
is
think,
black?
what?
Yo, the pandemic really came at, like, it's one of those bittersweet things, and this probably is the beautiful, the silver lining of it, I guess. Like, this is what I would take from it. Like you said, you have nothing else to do. However, people have passed or transcended during this time period, and I say, like, that's definitely the negative. Um, it has the whole world's questioning, like, what's next? Has people getting discriminated against just because they think they have it or started it or whatever. Um, but for, I guess, the progression of us, it seems as though it was a decent time. I don't know.
I'm just worried that we're going to have done this work. We're going to have gone out in the streets, risked our lives, our health, etc., to, you know, draw attention to this, spend our energy during this when we should be, you know, spending our energy dealing with the pandemic. We have to also be dealing with racism. So we're like overexhausting ourselves in this period where we need to be resting and like watching our health in the first place. And then we're going to turn around and we're going to have concessions made that like demobilize movement again, and we're not going to see actual change. Because when we did this, you know, 3-4 years ago, what did we get? Body cams that are always off, never on. When they're on, we have video. Video doesn't change anything. They were like, oh, here's the body cams, feel better. So right now we have, you know, painted streets. You know, maybe we'll get a couple officers taken off. That'd be great. But like, where are we seeing actual systemic change happening?
Yeah.
Because that, like, we're not getting the revolution that we need. And I think that is the issue, is that like people are demanding this change. Oh, look at Amazon. Exactly. People are demanding this change, but when Angela Davis has been telling you to abolish prisons forever, and we're still sitting here like, can we defund the police? What does that mean? Maybe a little bit, okay, but like also we shouldn't, because but it's like the police were founded for the purpose of enacting violence. Like when we think about the state,
catching slaves,
right? And I think that's important when we think about capitalism. Is the purpose of the state? The state was created to enact violence and against other people, and also enact violence against its citizens. And so we buy into this system, but like this is what the system was founded on, was violence, and especially against Black people, Black and brown people that are treated as though their lives don't matter. And that has been the messaging we've been getting for hundreds of years. And suddenly we have this, you know, statement that like is contradictory to that.
Yeah, I think that the point of the body cams is really interesting because it seems like they don't even matter. We got the body cams, we got phone cams. Like,
they don't matter. They're just there to make people feel like they achieved something so that they'll go home.
It's the key
it's the half measures.
The key word is all performative gestures. That's what the word that keeps coming back so far from this whole situation. Like when she mentions you got Black Lives Matter on the street, you got like all these companies sitting there saying like Black Lives Matter, or like buy Black company, but whatever. You getting all these companies, like people quote unquote apologize when you're saying things, but it's all performative gestures. Like that's just what I've been hearing.
Right. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Go ahead, Zach.
So how exactly do you, because again, like you said, that I agree with you on when Angela Davis said something, and I was like, okay, maybe it is something different, maybe. But what would you say is like, what do you foresee in the future? Like, what's your intuition giving you or making you think might be next in the next 6 months to a year? Like, will we be doing this again? Will we be moving progressively somehow? And if so, how would that look to you? Or how do you think it'll look?
I think it's going to be more of what we've seen in the past. I think we're going to expect things to fizzle out. And people are going to get distracted. I think like the way people decided COVID was over because they were tired of it. They're like, oh, I'm tired. People are tired of hearing about racism. Like, tired of literally tired of hearing about it. I'm like, really, guys? I'm also tired of hearing about it, but it's still going on, so we have to keep talking about it. I think that's like very essential to what we see going on. I think people are going to move on, and I think that we're not going to get the revolution that we need. I mean, I would love to see it, but I'm not that optimistic. But I do think that more people are having those conversations, and I think that I'm hopeful for incremental change at some level, at least at the interpersonal level. I'm hoping to see more justice, but I'm also seeing more revelation of the people that are on the wrong side of justice. I think where people are more showing themselves, their true colors more, and people are also using the internet to expose people. And so people are facing repercussions. I did see that they charged, I believe, Amy Cooper with calling the police unnecessarily. So like there's hope that like people can learn that there are repercussions for just like calling the police on Black people and threatening their lives. And so I'm hoping that there will be, you know, at least some of these concessions will translate into improvements in the lived realities of our people in the day-to-day. I'm just hoping that that'll be something, even though it's not what we need and not what we deserve. I think it's better than nothing at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I especially think that in the context of like, I know the name of the episode is Between the Lines, Capitalism, and a lot of what I grapple with and what is kind of a hard way to approach, but it's like we're attacking a system while keeping in mind that there are people that perpetuate a system of capitalism or oppression that has been perpetuated. And so when you all are talking about these half measures or performative actions, which is just something gestural to say, oh, we're thinking differently now, it doesn't really fully act as an agent to change a system that's perpetuating this. So when we talk about the revolution in our last episode, we talked about reform and resistance, right? And the difference. And so reform is more, okay, hey, we're going to use this system and change it, right? Or resistance, where the system's got to go all together. We need something new. And so like that's still kind of something that I have, you know, I'm still thinking through and processing. So it's like, you know, how do we really attack this system? What is the system that we're attacking? How do we look at it? And we're seeing it, but then how do we attack it in a way that's making a change? Like part of the system is the racism that is promoted or perpetuated by capitalism, or even funded by capitalism, even, right? And so it's like, okay, we know we're attacking that system, but what does attacking that really look like? It's so like resistance is easier when it's like, I know I'm attacking that man or that woman on the other side of me, or I know I'm attacking that cop on the other side of me, right? But then when we're talking about attacking the system, it's like, okay, what does that look like? What does that enemy look like? And, you know, the book we're reading is Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. And I forget the exact line that he says, but he says, I know that whatever we're fighting is an agent that I can't see. You know what I'm saying? He says that in so many words. And so like, I hope we can have that type of conversation to really kind of bring life and like really kind of read between the lines of like what capitalism is as a system and what that really means for us as a race.
I mean, I think when we look at capitalism, we see the way in which there is a divide in this idea of, you know, reform versus more revolution, I think, than anything, where people who the system is already working for the most part, are less likely to buy into revolutionary tactics. They're the ones that are like, oh, well, people that are invested in, when we think of capitalism and property, and the police are more invested in protecting property than actual, you know, people. And so we can look at the ways in which capital becomes the most important thing. And so for the people who are invested in that system, they bought into that system, they don't want to see the whole thing burn down and start over with something else. I don't think that it's likely even that power this big, a capitalist power this big, can actually like be really anything else. I'm not really even sure what the solution is. I mean, we've never seen the possibilities And that's why the radical
Exactly.
imagination is so important. Of like
Yes.
all that
Say
could
that.
be.
Say that.
Is still very much out there, and we need to stop thinking about, you know, what's on the table, what's allowed on the table, and start thinking about like what isn't allowed on the table. What, because we can suggest, you know, we defund the
Right.
police, but what does it mean
Right.
to really abolish prisons? Because when we think about capitalism and the ways that mass incarceration is a major industry and source of production in our country, like getting rid of the mass incarceration system would drastically change the lives and the justice and experiences of Black people all over the country, but it would also very much impact the economy, and it would impact all of these capitalist industries. But I also think that we have a very interesting space where we have all of these, you know, performative gestures from companies, big companies, saying like, you know, we stand with you. I mean, Amazon put up Black Lives Matter on the thing. Meanwhile, they're showing commercials on how to, or how well their workers are treated. Meanwhile, we know their
We
workers are
know
being
that's
treated
not true.
terribly.
We know that's
Like,
not
I'm
true.
like, if you put more money into actually, you know, supporting your workers rather than, you know, making videos about how you're supporting your workers, we wouldn't be having this problem. We wouldn't be having these conversations. But we also need to think about what it looks like when people have trillions of dollars but aren't actually, but like there is still injustice in our society, and like how people can exist in that space ethically is really important, I think, when we think about capitalism, because everyone wants to imagine themselves as that person. And so when we have to get away from that mindset and look collectively for a way forward, than individually thinking, oh, well, I could be, you know, the next Bezos, so, you know, we have to protect him. And really it kind of comes down to like being able to see ourselves as a collective. And if your, you know, your brother, your sister, your sibling isn't getting, you know, to move forward with you and isn't getting justice as well, then you're not getting justice.
Wow, man, like that's a whole nother level of it. And like what you're talking about specifically too, part of what I got was like the fact that we maybe even idolize people like Jeff Bezos is essentially paying respects to the system, right? And so even examples like that, or people thinking like that, is gonna perpetuate, you know, further create that cycle of, oh, I want to be this great business person. And maybe that can be used differently, but it's the idea that still gets continued of using this system of capitalism for gain, which is what we're trying to fight, because we know that gain also comes at the cost of, like, as Ta-Nehisi would put it, bodies.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like people's bodies. And he made that so clear. Like he made like his imagery around it because he lived it. He came up in Baltimore, and, you know, or Baltimore, you know, B-more. But he puts it, he says, this is a visceral experience. And like the imagery that he's using, connecting oppression, capitalism, the system, our trauma, to the impact that has on our body, is visceral. And it brings a certain immediacy to, man, this is what's at stake type of deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, you wanting more of the same is putting certain things at stake. It's putting your body at stake. You know what I'm saying? And like, we are at a foundational level, we always want to come back to capitalism. We can see that too. Like the pandemic, it's like, when's the economy gonna be back up and running? You know what I'm saying? And you can be a social justice crusader, but everybody's like, when is the economy gonna be back up and running? So like you said, we're still placing that proper.
And who does the idea of the economy, who does that affect? Because when we think about the ways that people are imagining who's losing money right now, right? Like, who's losing money are like, okay, these companies are losing money, but why does that necessarily have to lead to people being laid off and losing their jobs and losing their livelihood? So why should, you know, company A, big business, has all this money, that's a company, not a person. If they lose money, why should that lead to, you know, my neighbor losing their job?
Right.
Like they don't actually, that doesn't actually, they think that's like an A equals B equivalent, but
It's
it doesn't,
not.
it doesn't have to do
It
that.
doesn't have to. I love that you're thinking that way. Yeah.
And people don't think about that. It's like it does. They don't have, like, when people think, oh, if they increase the minimum wage, then prices have to go up. Prices don't have to go up. Profit could go down. You could take less profit and pay your workers more. That is a possibility. Are people going to do it? Probably not.
Right.
But is it possible? Yes. It's not necessary for people to act like, oh, because we pay more, things need to cost more.
Man, you're talking about because I'm thinking about this from an economic perspective, thinking about literally going to a supply and demand chart, right? And how, like, just how the dynamics of economic systems or the laws or rules that economic systems play by create like an environment where profit is placed over people. You want to see the graph going up and to the right, right? We're not talking about up and to the right for equity over growth. We're talking about up and to the right for profit. So
right. I mean, when you look at the Gini coefficient for the US, it's crazy low for or like it's like for like the Gini coefficient is like a measure of like inequality in a country. And
like 60.
Like we have like for a developed country, our inequality is out of control. But the thing is, our inequality is rooted in the fact that we have a non-homogenous population, so we can't relate to the people that we think of as poor, as disenfranchised, etc. Because they're like not seeing as the same people. So when we paint the impoverished as Black and brown bodies, then white people don't feel the need to create systems that like actually benefit and improve life for those people, because they don't look like them. That doesn't seem relatable to them. They don't feel like they have a linked fate with those people. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just, a paycheck away from being poor. Because poverty doesn't look white.
So they don't even have that fear of being poor after, missing a paycheck. You're saying that their minds don't even process that the same way.
That's not what the poor look like to them. Like I'm literally like, I remember being in undergrad and I was in a car with this girl. She was, and we were driving by and there was a man, asking for money. And she goes, oh, he's not even homeless. I know what homeless people look like.
Oh.
Like that idea of like poverty looking different than you does not allow for us to like actually fight for this dismantling of a system that disproportionately treats people who are in these situations as less than human, as less than people, as not deserving of housing, of like education and healthcare. Like those should be, things that everyone has access to. And it's like, but does everyone really deserve it? Because the people that don't have it don't look like me. So I don't know if they really deserve, they might not appreciate it the same way as like I would.
Or or certain Republican ideology, like, do you deserve it? Did you work hard enough for it? Like you being alive
meritocracy
isn't enough.
Oh my gosh,
you being a human isn't enough.
Yeah, because like just matters, right? Like that's the whole. It just matters, not just better than right? Like no, matter. They matter. No, that's a problem for you. Okay, got it.
You're reminding me of
who?
Michael Che. Do you watch him?
I think I've heard of him.
You should definitely watch. If you haven't watched his comedy special, you definitely should watch Michael Che's
add it to my list.
Yeah, so he did Saturday Night Live, and he did the whole Beyonce is Black. That's when I kind of got on him, but he did the whole Beyonce is Black. This was like a couple of years ago, right? And then he did a comedy special where he was like, when 9/11 happened, he was like, you know, they were like, you know, we're talking about that years later. And he's like, when black people talk about, you know what I'm saying, you know, police brutality, they're like, yeah, are you still feeling a way about that? You know, that was 2 weeks ago. But years later, we still celebrate, you know what I'm saying, 9/11. And then he's like, you know, how about we have shirts that say all buildings matter? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was funny. And he was like, you know, he's like, we're not saying, he's like, I don't think we're asking for too much. We're just saying Black lives matter. Just
I think
matter.
Right, yeah, I think I did see that one.
Yeah.
Like,
matter.
It's just crazy that they've politicized such a basic statement. Like, it's so straightforward and simple.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it's not like I feel like I can maybe understand the feeling of threat of, like, you know, Black Power movement, whatever. But like, Black Lives Matter is like minimal. I feel like
matters.
that's like a low bar to
not asking for a lot.
Just matters.
People are like almost completely irrational in why they are against Black Lives Matter. Like, most of the arguments don't even make basic sense to me.
Well, people are making new reasons now. Like, they're saying, like, y'all giving y'all money to an organization that's just funding the Dems. But I'm like, in my opinion, I was like, dog, we kind of knew they weren't going to fund the Republicans. But
right, but like, it's so much bigger than politics.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's on there where people, I've seen it twice, where somebody's like, there's unclassified or classified, it's like miscellaneous money, like money that people are like, they don't know where it's going or something like that. But it's one of those things
unaccounted for.
Yeah, I watched a video today where it was like maybe like 15 minutes long, and this woman was saying that she was debunking Black Lives Matter, the actual org. And she was saying how if you're a cis hetero male, then you can't have a leadership role with them. And it was like, she was going down through how their views were like, they're literally just giving the people that normally don't have a podium to speak on, that, you know, a place to come in and speak and whatever.
And they're the ones that are doing the work.
Right. And it was like this lady, it seemed like the woman that was talking about it, I was like, dang, it's kind of like you're going against the sexism that I'm trying to get my head away from. Like, you're kind of like perpetuating. And she's basically saying, like, where's the men? But I was like, wait.
I mean, even if you look at Kay Taylor's From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation, like, she has, or they have this this chapter that kind of talks about the missing men, because of how many men that are in our like generation cohort that are incarcerated or dead.
Literally, that is such a big number, though, if you think about it.
What's the number?
I don't. Do I have the book over here?
I forget what it is, but
incarcerated or gay.
Oh yes,
So,
it's like
men,
the
yeah.
missing. Hold on, I have them written down somewhere.
I remember that being a large number, and I thought about it. You know, when you break it down, it's like it's really a lot of men, Black males, that are in prison. They're not with their families. They're either in prison or dead.
Well, I get the prison number, but I've never seen the like prison. And you said gay or dead?
Dead.
Oh, dang, my bad. Whew, okay. Okay, prison or dead, then that's okay. I was about to say, how does that correlate?
I don't know where my computer is actually like freaking out. Apparently, I'm out of application memory.
Yeah, we can see you fine.
Right, but it might disappear at any point. But yeah, I can't actually open my files because it's like, you have no memory, so let me pull anything up. I'm trying to see if I have it around somewhere.
I think it was like 1 in 4. It's like 1 in 4 is supposed to be in prison.
Let me see.
That's a large number, bro.
Yeah, it really makes me want to walk around and tell people, like, dog, I'm happy you not in there.
Right. But then it's like, again, the recentering of like Black men, as though like that's all the movement is about, and as though when Black men are removed from their families, that like there's not other people affected, and that those people aren't often women and gender expansive folks. That like, I'm like, people are losing their breadwinners, people are losing their children. Like, it's not just the men being affected by these the state-sanctioned violence that's happening of like mass incarceration. Like our whole communities are being affected.
Yeah.
It's a big. I guess we'll just go back to that word again. You know, intersectionality. Like everything's just
intersectionality is important.
Yeah, everything's connected in some way. Like it's like a big butterfly effect in the current time period. Like you take this section from the family, then this is gonna happen, or you do this to one person in this family, and then this is gonna happen, and it's like a full circle effect. But overall, it's like, how do you combat that when it's everything circling you, you're trying to break out of it?
Right.
Yeah, man.
And going back to what Ashley was saying with the imagination, where school.
Oh yeah.
Since school's taking away your imagination, so you're getting hit at school too.
Read
so
between the lines.
Yeah. This is wild. So if you can't even imagine, and school's already taking your imagination from you, so you can't even imagine what a different society could look like. So then now you're just like, well, I guess I can't do anything, or I'm just gonna.
I mean, that was the reason why the Black Panther as a cultural moment was so important. It was like all of what could have happened without white intervention and like colonization. It's like, what would Africa have been like? Like that idea of just thinking what could have been was such an important part, I think, of the developing the Black imaginary for people of like, we could have better. And I think that's when we look at like even just having the images of like presidents like Obama. Like that's why Black Lives Matter popped off during Obama's presidency. It's like, wait, but you were supposed to give us better and you still, even you didn't. So we've got to do something now. Like if we can get like more, like higher, we end up with higher expectations of livability and justice and liberty and like the right to like joy and liberation, not anything, outlandish or ridiculous.
You think Obama was a formative gesture?
Yes.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
That was cute though. I mean, I love Obama.
I mean, he gets his flowers from me right now.
I think he was great. They're very classy, but like very much into respectability politics that like don't benefit like everybody getting forward. Like if it's not all of us getting free, we're not free.
Right.
Yeah. I get you. And I mean, on the order of like using our imaginations or our realism, I think I'll throw this book out there. It's called Capitalist Realism. A friend of mine actually put me onto the book, but I think that would be a cool book for you all to read in general. But a guy named Mark Fisher wrote the book, and it basically discusses the fact that the reality that we live, or the quote unquote reality that we live in capitalism, is actually not a reality, it's a realism, right? Which basically means that it's just as created as it is quote unquote real. So capitalism as an ideology and the fact that we live it out as if it's real brings life to it, and we respond to it as if it's real. But the idea of capitalism always demands more of itself, right? And it does this at the expense of other alternatives. And the way that I realized my own bias is, so I'm in a filmmaking, videography, and me and my friend, we do this world building exercise, right? So build a world out, a hypothetical imaginary world. Build this world out where something other than capitalism is the predominant way that we live our lives or make our exchanges. And for the life of me, I could not even tell him in a hypothetical imaginary situation. I couldn't even invent anything imaginary that spoke to a life that was different from what our current system is. And therein lie my bias, and that also exposed a bias of capitalism, right? Not being able to show other alternatives as possibilities. So now when we talk about anything outside of capitalism, people don't respond to it as if it's as if it's realistic. You know what I'm saying? You need a reality check. You ain't saying nothing real. If you ain't talking money, then you're not talking at all. You know what I'm saying? So we're not even able to entertain. We're not even able to entertain anything outside of something that's currently oppressing us. You know, and that's something that we should really look at, and we should really strive to open our imaginations in a way where that becomes possible, and our imaginations about systems that will be more equitable for us to live in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we were talking a little about socialism and how that could look side by side with capitalism, or a socialist society in general, or just what else is out there. You think this probably be a good time for us to check out that video clip and see what Angela Davis has to say, and maybe that could spark some interest while Ashley gets back in here.
All right.
She just told me, sorry, her laptop died, but it was great talking with y'all.
Okay, cool.
Would I just say thanks, or do I ask is she coming back, or y'all?
It sounded like she was done.
It sounded like, yeah, it sounded like she said what she had to say.
All right, so we'll check this out and see what this inspires.
Can you talk about?
Are you about to okay, yeah, cool.
Racism and capitalism.
Y'all here? Hold on, let me turn it up.
Often right. And speak about how they are intimately connected, and talk about a world that you envision.
Well, wait, go back.
Yeah, racism is integrally linked to capitalism.
Talk about racism and capitalism. You often write and speak about how they are intimately connected, and talk about a world that you envision.
Yeah, racism is integrally linked to capitalism, and I think it's a mistake to assume that we can combat racism by leaving capitalism in place. As Cedric Robinson pointed out in his book Black Marxism, capitalism is racial capitalism. And of course, to just say for a moment that Marx pointed out that what he called primitive accumulation, capital doesn't just appear from nowhere. The original capital was provided by the labor of slaves. The Industrial Revolution, which pivoted around the production of capital, was enabled by slave labor in the US. So I'm convinced that the ultimate eradication of racism is going to require us to move toward a more socialist organization of our economies, of our other institutions. I think we have a long way to go before we can begin to talk about an economic system that is not based on exploitation and on the super exploitation of Black people, Latinx people, and other racialized populations. But I do think that we now have the conceptual means to engage in discussions, popular discussions about capitalism. Occupy gave us new language. The notion of the prison industrial complex requires us to understand the globalization of capitalism. Anti-capitalist consciousness helps us to understand the predicament of immigrants who are barred from the US by the wall that has been created by the current occupant. These conditions have been created by global capitalism. And I think this is a period during which we need to begin that process of popular education, which will allow people to understand the interconnections of racism, heteropatriarchy, capitalism.
I thought that was a pretty good video, honestly. I think the imagery of the jails really had it kind of implied how the mass incarceration of black and brown people are capitalism today, or we're still capital today. Like nothing's really changed on that aspect.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different name, different system, you know, in a sense. What's your thoughts, Courtney?
It seems like with the destruction of capitalism, the destruction of like criminal justice has to go right along with it, like over our current system. But Courtney, go ahead. I think you was about to mute your mic.
Come on, Courtney. I know
Hey,
you got
how you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing all right. How are y'all?
Hey, you doing good? We just having a
Alright.
little convo between the lines.
Yeah, I'm just here to listen. I'm appreciating all this knowledge I'm taking in right now.
Really, I don't like to talk in the echo chamber. You know what I'm saying? I like to mix it up. I don't like to hear my own voice. I don't think we do either. I would love it. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? You think capitalism promotes racism or it funds it?
I do. I think that it does. Just in terms of after listening to that video, my issue, and I talk to Zach about this all the time, is just it's great for us to have these conversations, but I come from a place where I want to know the solutions. And I think right now there really are none. We just have the space and the information to talk about it, but a lot of people just want to see a change and we don't know how to make it happen.
Yeah.
It was good, Joe.
Hey, what's up, Angbor?
I think
I want to make a comment to Courtney in a second. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Are you studying something right now?
I actually am. I'm studying for my classes right now.
For real? What kind of classes? I'm just interested because I want to tie this in. But go ahead.
I'm getting my master's in educational leadership right now.
Wow. Okay. So you're gonna be like a principal, maybe one day.
Yeah.
What's higher than a principal? I guess board. Be on the board.
Yeah, board and the superintendent.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I've been thinking about possible models for what that would look like, educationally, economically, socially, and like definitely through an education system. Or if we're talking about Black people, I think definitely African centric education, right? And teaching kids to learn through certain visual or rhythmic means, talking about history, ancestors, all of that. As far as the economy goes, I think like part of why we're doing this is and having these conversations is like really, I guess the whole theme is I think the whole concept is, I guess, liberation through education, right? And like what I was saying about not talking in an echo chamber is like I want to hear other people's perspectives, and I think everybody that's a part of Unlocked and the book club wants to understand different perspectives of people who are thinking on this, because like you're taking your education and you're thinking on a whole nother level about educational leadership. So you're thinking on a level of how does the education system need to be set up? How does the school need to be set up? Mainly, how do I interact with the people here, the organization, in order to create an environment that's best for the kids? So like you're doing that work in your own right for education. And I think it takes more minds like that kind of getting together, like us actually hearing, okay, yeah, what are your thoughts on like how education really needs to happen? That's not my lane, but I like to ideate on models that could be different for setting up a new system that would actually address the issues, so like, that's why I come to this. That's why I like the fellowship with y'all and do that,
Courtney, I'd like to ask, do you feel as though you are getting what you want in that leadership program? Like, do you feel like it's actually helping you become the leader that you want to be, like yourself? Or do you feel like it's just like a cookie cutter leader program. Like they're like, okay, I'm gonna send this type of leader out here. Like we already got what we giving you, and this is what you're gonna get, and type of thing. Okay.
I think it's a cookie cutter program. I know that after going to Georgia State, that program was created for teachers who wanted to go out in the real world and teach real world students. The program that I'm in now is basically, it's not culturally or socially aware of anything. It's just read the book and hope you can figure it out when you become a principal. And I think even when I was down in Atlanta, the day you came and I was saying, you know, my professor put in quotes by Ronald Reagan, she put in quotes by Gandhi. And I'm just like, are you that far away? Are you that far removed from what's actually going on that you felt comfortable to teach this to your class, a group of adults who are about to go and, you know, engage with other adults that are about to engage with students. So the next generation is still going to be oblivious to what's going on because that's what they're teaching. If that makes any sense.
Right.
Culturally aware education, and is that how you're gonna use it? Because I mean, you have that opportunity. I mean, the fact that you're even on this right now means that you are aware of your culture, you're aware of your race, you're aware of your identity in some way, shape, or form. So like, do you plan on like using that to innovate on different models or systems for education systems?
Most definitely. I'm in the works of trying to get a grant to create my own curriculum for Black schools. But that's just a long time in the making. But yeah.
That's cool. Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool.
I would like to see, like, Akbar, I know you've been in Athens with the students out there and everything. Just tying in this whole education aspect, I guess what would y'all say is like what you see in your face from the impact of like the trickle down effect of capitalism, essentially, and how it gets to the education system, or just all the like capitalism, racism, sexism, like what else is there? Homophobia, patriarchy, misogyny.
That's interesting, bro.
Like what? Because I know I've seen stuff, but I'd like to see what y'all have seen in y'all areas with the students and children that you've been with.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like working with Thomas Lay, I remember one particular instance where this kid, we got him a book bag because he didn't have a book bag, and I don't know what happened. I think he took it home, and an older lady who had been working at the school said his mom is apparently like a major drug dealer. So she more than likely took his book bag and she's using it for her business. And dude showed back up with a Ziploc with all like his school appliances, like his pencils, his book, in a Ziploc, literally. So it's little things like that, trying to get kids to do their homework, and they're telling you they're literally too hungry to focus. Like they don't have food in their systems, and you're expecting them to perform at a certain level where like the bare minimum hasn't been met. You know, these kids don't have food. So I think that's just one of those things with capitalism and just the way the system operates, where people have not met the bare minimum, and you expect them to function on this academic level. It's funny because he kind of talks about it on the book, you know, just this disillusionment with the school system, you know, going to school and asking yourself, like, what is this? What is this supposed to do to me? Because you've never seen any example of somebody who went to school and really made something of themselves. You've not encountered any like close examples of that. Right. So basically, just understanding that we have to work with kids from the bottom up, take care of basic needs, make sure, you know, the situation at home is healthy first and foremost. We've had to buy kids groceries, things like that, just making sure that once those basic needs are done out the way, and the environment is healthy, then they can actually perform well in school. So that was my experience. one big takeaway I had.
Mm-hmm. Like, for example, what y'all, Courtney and Angbor are just what you all just said, putting that together, some way that I would start ideating towards solutions, Courtney, would be like understanding that, because I didn't understand that even context that deeply. Like, I understood teachers need to get, you know what I'm saying, food to their kids have to be fed, you know what I'm saying, certain bare necessities, but like thinking about that context culturally and bringing education into that, it's like, okay, Courtney, you talked about Black curriculum, you know what I'm saying, what a curriculum even means for a Black student or child. And Akbar, you're talking about the environment. So like those are two things right there that I know innovations or iterations on the education system would have to look to provide those two things. Okay, curriculum wise, and also environment wise, like understanding the context of your students in the sense of like, yo, you might not have eaten, or you might be like, in Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about this, you might be in fear for your body right now, you know what I'm saying, maybe somebody pulled up on you in the street and you're shaking up right now. So how do I deal with that in an environment when I'm asking you to get some complex math concept like I'm asking you to read history of
Don't even care about.
your people being enslaved, and you out here living it in the streets. And that's what he's talking about too. Like, just think about what presence of mind that places a student in, you know.
And you expect that student to operate on the same level as a suburban kid who, I mean, the least he got to do is, I mean, at least do good at school. Like, that's just, you know, he's got too much else going for him. So I think it's just crazy that we have this one curriculum for kids who live in two different worlds.
Expound on that, man. Courtney, this is what Courtney is studying.
I mean, I'll let her handle it, because I mean, I feel like she'll have more to say. But I'm like I said, it was just last year I worked at Thomas Lane. I really went face to face with it. Like, these kids just they're in fourth grade, but I mean, mentally, if you were to really compare them to, I feel like the average performing fourth grader is nowhere close to that. And it's not that they're not smart, not that they're not intelligent, just that this is not their priority. This is not something that they can possibly give their energy to. So.
So I love what you said about the one curriculum for two different, students in two different worlds. And I know as Black teachers, we definitely have to address what we call the Maslow hierarchy of basic needs for our kids before we ever address any type of academic thing in the classroom. Because, right, you don't know what went on with them over the weekend, what happened last night. Are they hungry? Are they mentally stable for the day? So I definitely agree with that. We have to be aware.
And what was the original topic? Because I kind of came in late. I was trying to.
We just been talking about, I guess, capitalism. And I think Kenny or Jalen could elaborate on that. I didn't write it down.
Yeah, but can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
What Agbor was saying about like the mom being a drug dealer just makes me think about like how many people I grew up with that I could tell, like, their parents didn't really make sure that they did their homework, or their parents didn't really make sure that they had school supplies, because maybe their mom had 1 or 2 or 3 jobs, so I think capitalism also affects families in that way, whereas like the kid doesn't really have the guidance that they need because the family doesn't have basic needs. And I think that's something that's been on the political platform somewhat. I mean, I think Andrew Yang talks about, universal basic income. And I know me and Kenny were talking about that, like making sure that everybody has guaranteed money to make sure, that they have food, a place to live, clothes to put on their back. And then I guess me and Kenny were talking about, like, what does it look like after that? Is it just capitalism after that and people work for extra, or just what does that structure look like outside of that universal base income?
What is that structure of what? Say that one more time for me, bro.
Like, what structure goes over? So everybody's given like $1,000, or let's say $3,000, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That make sure you have all your basic needs. Me and Kenny were talking about exploring what capitalism looks like outside of that. Like, so do we still go to work and have our jobs? Whatever we make is excess. Um, and if that is the case, do people still get exploited through that system of capitalism, even though you got universal base needs at the bottom?
I think people would want to live off of more than $12,000 a year.
Well, I mean, that was just I was just saying a number.
Yeah, like I think people would, like, I think I was talking about this with, I might have been talking with y'all or someone else, but I read some book on capitalism, but it was actually just breaking down how, I guess, communism or socialism or whatever the opposite of what it's been a minute since I read the book, but it was like whatever the opposite it would be, and it was saying like it would never work because essentially it would lead to quote unquote slavery in the book's opinion, where it was saying that you would have to eventually force somebody to work, like, and then if you're forcing somebody to work, then they were saying that's slavery. Like, how are you going to get somebody to work if the whole country is paid something? Why are they going to even want to work? However, I don't think that's necessarily real. I don't think that's the truth. I think that was just a pro-capitalism book that I read. There's a lot of capitalist propaganda books. Like I know that for a fact, because for a long time, I definitely was talking to Courtney saying, "Hey, we need to get some money. Like, again, like we need to get this real estate, like, and everything." Like, and that is some type of. But
what would make people work outside of that?
Right.
One of the questions I have. If it was completely like, so let's say people didn't have to work and you just had your universal base income, like what would give people the incentive to go out and like get a job?
I feel as though eventually we're already headed to something where a lot of these jobs are going to be very automated. Like we were talking about AI earlier. I think AI was taking a lot of people's jobs at some point. So eventually you're going to get to some point where you're going to have to find something for either find something for someone to do, or you're basically taking it away from them anyways. Or everybody's just going to be. I feel like the propaganda will get to you, and you'll want more than, and want to work or something. Like I feel like that's something of a human need to want to create something. Like, I feel like even the person on their laziest day knows that I could have done something, or might want to have done something, productive.
Yeah, and I don't think what socialism or providing for basic needs, I don't think that's designed or that should have the consequence of somebody not feeling productive. So like I think it's kind of implicit that the argument is like, because you exist in this world and because you're born into this society, there's certain basic, like she talked about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy. We know that there's certain basic things that you need as a human in order to continue life as a human being and in society, right? So that's one. Two, you do have a choice, right? So capitalism presents you with this choice that's not really a choice, right? So it's like you can choose to work or you can choose not to. Yeah, you can, but like the way the system is set up, if you don't end up working, what does that really mean? You don't have your basic needs provided for, right? But then now you're working and that profit is going to, you know what I'm saying, the corporation or your tax dollars, and you're still having a hard time paying for your basic needs. You know what I'm saying? So like, therein lies, I think, the issue. And I think the way we got on this topic, if I'm remembering correctly, the conversation was about, can equity coexist with capitalism? Can a system that provides equity to individuals coexist in a capitalist society?
I personally don't think so. I think the way capitalism works, I think it uses like racism and sexism as methods to gain capital. It like because in capitalism, somebody has to be taken advantage. Like somebody wins and somebody loses every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they use racism and sexism to like make people lose.
Mm-hmm. Well, how?
How?
Yeah, how?
Um. Well, we could talk about gender. Women not afforded the same opportunities, or we could talk about mass incarceration and how, well, one, prison labor. Two, where they're putting black people in jails at a disproportionate rate. Um, so many different ways racism and sexism, like, makes things impossible. Let's say racism in the sense of education, where right now, if you, let's say you don't get a job, you don't go to college, you can really you have access to a certain amount of money, like in our system. Like you can only get certain type of jobs that pay you a certain wage. So if you haven't had the proper education, you're not even really you don't have access to that next level of capitalism or wealth in our system. So I think those are ways in which racism can work with capitalism to make sure that black people are poor.
Yeah, but also consider like capitalism is based off like natural selection, so basically like survival of the fittest in that society. But things like racism and sexism, I feel like that's like an unnatural selection, natural selection that has been added to the system. So basically now, if we're to look at like wildlife with animals, I mean, if an animal has certain traits, it won't survive in a certain environment. If an animal is born with certain deformities, when you add things like racism and sexism, which I don't think are natural systems at all, but they add that into this realm of natural things that occur that will marginalize or disparage somebody. So I feel like those are all, yeah, like you said, added to the system to where it looks like natural selection. It looks like because you're a woman, these things work against you. It looks like because you're black, things work against you. But reality is just somebody who has been on top for long enough to where they understand the system. They know we need not just to have prey, but we need somebody who's constant prey. We need somebody who by default is going to be lower. And that's why you have sexism as, this thing where people say it's natural and it's in every society. Now people have just mastered long ago that you need somebody who's from the get always inferior. And that's how you establish a capitalist society. Because then you up the game. You can say women are, automatically out of the market. So it reduces your market to a smaller group of people. And just by doing that, it elevates you in society. So it's little things like that.
I think a good question is capitalism bad? Like without, let's say we remove sexism and we remove racism, like is that survival of the fittest just amongst people? Is that something that we're okay with in our society, or like do we want something where everybody wins?
It's a good question, Jalen.
That question is like asking us, like, if we're all white men, we'll be cool with it.
Like, would it be fair?
I guess.
But even then, okay, let's say that we were all white men. Well, they've discriminated against their own, like the Irish, the people of the Judaism. Like they've done this to themselves to at times in the past. If I'm looking at their history, within their own communities, amongst themselves, like some type of oppression still would be there. I mean, Like I think that's how the Fighting Irish got their nickname. Like you know, they did have the Irish as indentured servants. So, but not to our extent, you know, like, but
Yeah.
I would like to say that Angela Davis's book, Freedom is a Constant Struggle, it's like a compilation of interviews and lectures and speeches and stuff. Have any of y'all checked it out yet?
I haven't.
I just finished it recently, and I understood how our situation here in the States as descendants of Africa has some relation to the Palestinians. However, after I read that book, I realized it was a direct correlation. And it makes me think that it doesn't really matter where you are, who you are, and there's going to be some type of loser in a sense in that sense. Like somebody has to lose. And
why is that, man?
Because there has, like, how do you get an exponential amount of capital or income or wealth with, for instance, okay, first thing you'll learn when you're starting to learn about capitalism is make something else make the money for you. Like make money in your sleep, make your money make more money. How did they do that? How'd they start that? With getting labor from other people somehow. Like they made money by their money, which was the people were the money at the time, so they made money by making their money make money for them. Because like, so they still have to find somebody to do that again. And you could say the stock market, but the stock market really just comes right back to us again, because we were the stock market.
Yeah, right. The stock market was based on slaves, selling slaves.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like no matter how you look at it, if you actually look at how everything's intertwined and whatnot, like somebody's losing somewhere because somebody wants to be lazy and have somebody else make money for them. Like they want to say everybody else is lazy, but nah, like most of them billionaires really actually, as far as physical labor, you know, not about to get out there and work or do the things that they have everybody else doing to make this type of capital, you know. Like it's impossible to get to Bezos level without somebody being exploited. It's impossible. Like how can you, okay, so essentially let's say you get even the closest to some type of form of socialism. There's a company, I don't remember what company it is, I've shared it with somebody before, but there's a company where the CEO actually made it where I think it's like a company of 8, it's like 8 or 9 of them, it's not that many, they all make the same amount of money. Like he's made it where they all make the same. Is that kind of what you would like to see? Is that something y'all would like to see, where like even if you were to work in Walmart, you're getting the same thing that all the Walton children are getting?
Maybe not the same thing. Like I would understand if it was not the same thing, but I think there should be redistribution of wealth, like amongst. Like Ashley was saying, like y'all would make less money, and you pay you would raise the wage for employees. Like you'll be okay if you make a little less money in your. I think it's gonna have to take for people to like give up wealth and privilege and being literally willing to give it to somebody else. If those people in positions of power or wealth don't want to do that, I don't see how do you dismantle our system of oppression through capitalism if you don't.
Okay.
Well, she said you can't. She mentioned the Audre Lorde quote earlier. Like you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. You know, that's like she mentioned that.
Yeah. So with that said, right, because the question we're debating right now is capitalism inherently good or bad? right? And I think reading between the lines of capitalism requires us breaking down, okay, what is capitalism as a system, and determining whether that system in its nature creates an environment that always creates a further separation between wealth. Thus, we could be saying capital cannot be equally distributed or equitably distributed by a system that is capitalism in its current form. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we saying that? Or we probably we should see what, I don't want to know y'all's definitions of capitalism or what y'all think capitalism is, but Zach, go ahead.
I was gonna say just to add on, like, good for the whole, because like if you say good or bad, then I think you can easily just say for who, like,
Right,
if
right,
it's or Bill Gates, it's great. Like,
right. Interesting, bro. Yeah.
anybody, my bad.
Yeah, no. You're fine. I mean, Ta-Nehisi was talking about that. So when he talked about, he said he starts off like this. He's like, you know, I'm not arguing the fact that it's a government for the people. I'm arguing the fact of like who the people are. Like, the government is for who? The government is for what people? And what he goes on further to say is like, that people is not an inclusive people. Like, our interpretation of it is, oh, that means if you're black, you're white, if you're male, if you're female. But he's arguing that that interpretation is not actually true. That interpretation is not the reality, that those people, the government for the people, represent a select group of people, a white group of people, a specifically male group of people. And it's no surprise that we get racism and sexism. And we were talking along gender lines and we're talking along racial lines as well. So like, the system has been taken and used that way. But like, I'll start with my definition of capitalism. So like, one of my degrees was in finance, right? And so the definition of capitalism is a market where buyers and sellers can come together to make an exchange. And Adam Smith laid out on this basis that if this market is for exchange, that our collective competition and self-interest will ultimately provide for the common good. So using a system of exchange and difference to provide for the common good, right? That's my 2 cents. Because somewhere from there, the system was taken and abused. Somewhere in that, the system ended up being imbalanced. But that's the starting point. That he published that in 1775 or 1776. The United States adopted The Wealth of Nations as literature that the United States would be then built on as a powerful nation, as a wealthy nation. So they took Adam Smith was born in Scotland and he studied in France, right? They took that literature and he studied the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, everything that Karl Marx is even talking about. He studied it, but he put an eye towards how does a nation develop wealth, right? And so I'm starting out with, that's my 2 cents.
So I think by that definition, what you just said, what we have in America isn't capitalism because it doesn't support the common good. It's like off that reason right there, like what we have in America, they did not correctly incorporate that concept of capitalism. It might be some other type of capitalism, but it's not that definition of capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what do you think it is? Like, what is actually existing? Where did that basic premise go left at? You know what I'm saying? Like, what went wrong?
From the beginning.
They started disenfranchising people that was part of that. But like you were saying, like, they didn't regard black people as people. So maybe they didn't even include that in what they considered the common good. You see what I'm saying? Like, they're not even thinking about black people's perspectives. So it really don't work out good for us when we think about it from that context.
Mm-hmm.
I think you about to say something, man.
No, I was going to say my little brother's here. I know it's wrong. But from a sociology perspective, it's like everything you said, yeah. but except for the last part with where you say it's for the common good, because first off, capitalism and forms of capitalism have existed in like societies all over the world for forever. But I feel like the difference with the U.S. and our particular situation is you have very recent newcomers into a capitalist system that was based off their labor, and now suddenly we're competing in the same market as the master. Slaves competing, the people who used to be slaves competing.
Crazy. Wow.
So I feel like that's where a lot of the problems come from. That's why the discourse around capitalism in Europe, I feel like around the world is just a little bit different. Capitalism exists in Africa, but I mean, they didn't have racism. Racism just puts a very new particular twist to it, because it's like, who are you to want to challenge me in my system? So they uphold these barriers. That's why I just think it's interesting.
Personally, I think that going to my favorite psychologist that Jalen put me on, Amos Wilson. He says that we are in a backwards system. Like, how does a world minority deceit the majority? Like, we're totally backwards in what we're supposed to be, essentially. And since Jalen also put me onto the book Stand from the Beginning, I've been checking that one out, and I realized that they like to put barbarism on. When I say they, I'm talking about oppressors. They like to put barbarism on who they're oppressing. However, I think that they really have us in a barbarism system where everything is backwards, and this is without, like, for instance, when we say culture and everything, right? Usually we're talking about like Caribbean culture, African culture, Hispanic culture, Asian culture. When you think white, most people be like, what culture? And it's like a culture of, going back to Dr. Leonard Jeffries,
America.
Destruction. That's their culture: death, domination, and destruction, and individualism. It's nothing that's a collectivism. Nothing that it doesn't. It's capital is their god.
In God we trust. In dollar we trust.
Yeah, essentially. So I think that they again, barbarism, at least from the definition I've looked up, is like a lack of culture and cruelty. And is that not what we're in? Something that has a lack of a true culture, like some type of, and we're in something that is very cruel. We see it. So is it really capitalism? Or if you're going by your definition that you told, because I've actually never actually looked up the actual definition of capitalism. I just gone off of what I've learned in classes and writing. I've never looked it up my personal self in the actual dictionary. So based off of that, we're more so in barbarism, in my opinion, that they put us in, but put the blame on us for. In reality, that's just that's them. That's their culture. That's their system, barbarism. In my opinion. What about you, Courtney?
So y'all want to hit a definition from Oxford?
I do. Like the Brady Bunch.
Oh, there she go. Hold on. No, put that thing back on. See, you're
I want to hear the Oxford definition.
Wait, no, I want to know. That's gonna bias you though. We got to hear. We got to know your starting point. We all gave our starting points.
I don't know enough about capitalism to speak on it.
You got bills.
True. I want to hear the definition.
I'm just messing with you.
So it says an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state.
Oh, that sounds about right then. Private owners, profit.
Wow. Okay, look up capitalism, Adam Smith. Okay, because no, that's interesting.
That's right here as well. And that's interesting because
that's interesting.
It says by private owners for profit. So is profit inherently a good thing? Like, is me trying to get more, you know, or like come out on top, or like, is that create?
So okay,
Go
ahead,
ahead. Whoever wants
Quick
to answer.
question.
Agbor.
Yeah, quick question. Do y'all think that it's flawed to sort of try to label it as good or bad?
Yeah.
I don't feel
Yeah,
like
I think that is limiting. I think that is limiting.
I would say beneficial or not beneficial. That's what I like to do when I like to change the word from good or bad to, is it beneficial or not beneficial? Like, is it helping or is it not? Is it
And for a specific group, also, like for the, I guess for like the common good or our community, I guess we would be talking from that perspective. So I think that's good for us to label that, like by saying, is it good or bad? What is that?
oh, you think it's good to say good or bad?
No. To like really hone on that, like just by saying good, like what do you really mean? Like we have to use a different word.
Oh yeah, right.
Right.
True.
I get what you're saying. Okay, yeah. Um Here's what I'll say though. There's certain assumptions. So like you were talking about how racism is like it's a flaw in this kind of like natural selection system. I think there's certain assumptions that we make in our system that cause people to lose. One of those examples is is profit a bad thing, right? I don't. So, in to answer your question, your statement, Agbor, profit is not a bad thing, right? I don't think profit is a bad thing. Here's where I think things go left. Our system of capitalism assumes scarcity as the context that we're working in. It doesn't assume abundance, right? So profit in a system, in a closed system of scarcity, assumes that one part of the system is getting something that the other part isn't. So if more is growing over here and it's a closed system and we're not operating in an environment where the overall resources are growing, then now you end up with the imbalanced distribution of wealth or resources of whatever. If we like learning or taking society or capitalism from an abundance perspective, that okay, more for me, it also means more for others as well. If I'm contributing into a system that provides more for the common good, then my profit doesn't equal someone else's loss. I'm not thinking in terms of scarcity. I'm thinking in terms of abundance. I'm thinking in terms of synergy instead of just competition. So yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you, it kind of boils down to the whole idea of ownership. There are resources here, I own them, and because I own them, I'm gonna pretty much like work with how I distribute it. Like I'm gonna pretty much put it for sale. Like if there's something I see growing in my house, I have the ability to sell it. It's not like, you know, neighbors can come over and be like, yo, like we don't got none of that growing over here. Like we have some. In capitalism, I will put it for sale. Basically.
Boom. Yes.
Is private ownership beneficial? Like,
I personally would say no, because I mean, granted I've already been raised in this system, so and I'm an only child, so I'm like mine. So, but however, I know that if I could change things, like how do you own land? Like when you actually think about it, like how do you?
What does that really mean?
Yeah, like where did that? Why do I need to? When like naturally we were nomadic, right? At some point we were nomadic, and you ended up to what was it? What's the next stage after nomads?
Agricultural.
Yeah, when you
Yeah, so hunter gatherer, and then it became more agricultural based.
right. So it's like, but it's kind of like in relating this to something else. I don't know what field this is in, but it's off of like self-development books. But it's like change brings growth and development and everything, right? So like, why would I ever want to be stagnant in one spot that I quote unquote own or anything? Like I think that that's one thing I feel like it holds us back of just trying to get that profit, that private ownership, possibly, because at the end of the day, I feel like this is just really a argument of humanity versus materialism, or maybe not even materialism, but maybe like what's another word that I could think, like I guess profit, money, but whatever is some type of, I guess it is material then, whatever a material that held some type of value. But at the end of the day, it's really like, why does this even matter more than humanity? You know, like why do we even have to spend money on medicine? Why do we even have to worry about where our next meal is coming from? Like, I've really realized that a lot of these arguments or disagreements that I've seen is really just that. Like, people, once you label somebody criminal or something like that, that's when all humanity goes away. Like, I really realized that. They're like, you broke the law. And a lot of other people are trying to say, like, that's not a reason to lose your life. And they're just like, well, you shouldn't have done it anyways. But it's like, that's still not a reason to lose your life. So again, it's just a humanity question, in my opinion. So it's kind of like, why do I need to own that for the benefit of humanity? I feel like that's more of a question that I would have to have a rebuttal with on, is private ownership good or bad, or beneficial or not? Like, why do I need private ownership in the first place?
That's something I have to do more research on, because I can easily think of arguments for private ownership if you're thinking about your own self-interest. But if I'm thinking about the greater good, then I don't see private ownership really being beneficial.
Yeah, I think so. Aristotle or Plato maybe writes about this in, like, I guess, the Republic, you know, talking about private ownership, private goods versus public goods, and then you got like rival goods. Y'all remember learning about this? Like, you got private goods, public goods, rival goods, and then there's one other one other category, because it's a square. I can't think of it right now, but it's a certain kind of framework. But yeah, I mean, I think here we find, okay, let's connect some of the dots. We said that capitalism was based on private ownership and profit, right? So capitalism itself, the nature of it demands more of itself. We always want to see profits going up. Out with the old, in with the new, right? You can have anything you want, but it comes at a cost. We can invent new things that you want. We can cap on your desires. You know what I'm saying? So it always demands more. But if we're talking about what that really means in the context of private ownership, it means that fewer people who want a greater stake of their own, expanding their land, expanding their ownership, it means few people are going to own more of the whole, right? Which is where the disparity comes in. So now it's not a public thing, it's a private thing. And it's individuals wanting private ownership for profit, and they want more profit, so they get more ownership. They're incentivized. I'm making the argument that capitalism and profit fundamentally incentivizes ownership and profit at the expense of social equality or equity.
Right, exactly.
I think that's a true statement. I could go ahead and stamp that one. I think.
I would have to ask y'all, would y'all be comfortable? Can y'all, going back to what Ashley was saying earlier, imagination. Can y'all imagine a world where you don't own a thing and
you share everything?
Yeah. How much do Black people really own, anyways?
Yeah,
I might own my shirt, and you know.
But can you even imagine that though? Can you imagine where you don't own anything?
Bro, it's so difficult, bro. I'm gonna be honest. It's difficult.
I can't imagine a life where I don't own anything and still live in abundance.
Well, what is abundance then?
Just, I guess just having the freedom to have what I want and need.
I was gonna say the same.
But
I
if
was gonna say the
nobody
same thing.
anything, then don't you have the access to what you want? If nobody owns,
You said in a world where I don't own anything, so nobody owns anything in this world.
yeah. When I say you, I just meant you.
Oh, okay.
Nobody owns anything. Like I have a picture in my. I want to know what y'all.
That is so interesting, bro. Cause I think that's a big point. Y'all, I do have to get ready to go. I have to work, y'all. Okay. Courtney, you know what I'm saying? Jump in as you can, you know, like I'm about to head out. But no, I feel y'all. Yeah, it's gonna be three dudes talking to each other. No, I'm playing.
I mean, we need more positive.
It's been I feel you. I mean, I'm just making a joke. Like, I mean, but yeah, I mean, we got a woman here as well to add her, you know, add input. But yeah, I do have to go though. I'm sorry, y'all. But this is always cool. Like, I'm gonna be back on here. I'm gonna be talking with y'all. Courtney, hopefully you'll be back too, and you won't be studying. You know, so good to meet you though.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
No.
All right then, fellas.
All right, man. Easy.
All right. I'm gonna see y'all.
You breaking up? What you say?
Now I was thinking of something. I was like, while he was talking, I was like, just how natural is capitalism? And then I was thinking, what's capitalism's connection or relation to culture? And it occurred to me that I feel like where capitalism is strongest, culture is weakest. Because I try to see it this way. I'm just like, if I always try to relate it to Africanisms because that's just how I base my logic. So I'm like, okay, so I know owning land is like one of the most powerful things you can do, especially like in Africa and whatnot. So, but the way things are shaped, the way capitalism is shaped in Africa is like, I own this portion of land, you own that portion of land. We're growing two different things. Obviously, the culture, the people are going to value one thing more. So in a lot of African societies, it's like, I don't necessarily, I own the land, this is my land, but the crop is not mine, it's ours, you know? And if there's conflict or something arises, then I can be like, okay, at the end of the day, this is my land, and so I don't want you on this land. Maybe you broke some social norm or something, but the crop itself is never individually owned by anybody. So, and I just feel like when you don't have that culture to back you up, when you don't have that sense of, I feel like culture shapes our morality, because a lot of the flaws we see in capitalism just come from greed and just, you know, your morals just aren't based in the right place. You're thinking of self-interest on these things. But when you're strong in culture, I feel like things like greed and all that individualism really gets weakened down, because you're thinking as a collective. You're thinking, what do we need? What do we need to produce? Who needs to produce what? You know, for the collective good. So I was just thinking, what are y'all's thoughts on that? You know, what's capitalism's relationship to culture? Like I said, I feel like where culture is strong, capitalism is weak. That's when you look at like aborigines and indigenous cultures and whatnot that don't operate on this super Western capitalism frontier, but you know they prosper in their own way. So get your thoughts on that.
Bro, you made that quote just now?
Yeah.
Well, you better write that before I start. I'm gonna give you credit though. I'm gonna give you credit, but I'm
good.
But what's y'all thoughts? That's a good question.
I think humans, and this is just my opinion, are just like inherently greedy and selfish. But I guess my question is, we've seen what poverty has done to our community and the culture that it has created. How do we perpetuate and create a culture that promotes sharing? Because I don't know how to do that within my classroom. Like, my kids they're selfish, and I can say share, share, share all you want, but being selfish is like ingrained in them. What's theirs is theirs, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, I think the important thing you said is a culture that's created out of poverty. Like, because here I was saying, culture versus capitalism, but what if the culture itself is based off, self-interest? And I got to get to the top. That's interesting. I don't
know. What about you, Jalen? Man, what's your thoughts?
In creating a culture based off of sharing, that it has to. I think it would have to be beneficial for somebody. Like, I would have to see the relationship between me giving somebody else something that's mine, and how that is also going to get me something back, how that's going to add benefit to my life by bringing this person closer or giving this person something that that would help them. So I think maybe drawing those connections for kids, or maybe creating a system where giving does in turn net you something back in return. Something like that, I would say would have to be in place.
Something like that would have to be in place. So then the conversation earlier that we had about expecting like wealthy people to just give and redistribute, that doesn't work, because they are also expecting something in return. If I tell kids, yeah, share because you will get something back in return, that's still them being selfish, in my opinion.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, I guess I'm trying to teach selflessness, or
I would say if you leave kids alone. Again, I personally think kids are the closest to God. They right out the womb.
I think they're the closest.
They're literally like, I feel like they're perfect. They come, and then the world corrupts that, and I don't know exactly how the world got to that at some point, but like if you left kids alone in a room daily since birth or something like that, I don't know how you would set this up. I don't know how this would work, this experiment or whatever. But I feel like if you left them alone, they would share, because a lot of kids do share in environments where they don't have it. Again, going different environment, like I feel like in environments where they don't have the desire to, or they don't have the need, or they don't feel the need of lacking something if they give it away. Does that kind of make sense? Like, I guess just in my Taoism book, it talks about something about like eliminating desire, or like it's like some about like most of the bad thing comes from having a desire. So you just gotta, like, if you take away the desire, then you won't have to do the negative, or that negative won't be there in a sense. So it's like if as a child, if I feel like I have enough, or I'm secure with what I have myself, so I guess creating a sense of self-awareness, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-confidence, like so I guess building that perfect brain that you want a kid to have, and that mental, then I feel like they would share without needing to tell them, like, you need to go share that. Like, hey, don't keep that, go share. Like, you don't have to do that with the kid that doesn't have the want to, is keep everything. Like, I don't know, like if he doesn't have desire, he won't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Zach. I'm kind of thinking along your lines, lines of what you're saying. And Courtney, going back to what you said, just the whole idea of a culture of poverty, I was trying to like think along with what Zach was saying, just understand what that means. And I feel like a lot of that, there's no such thing I just came to realize that's like a culture of poverty, because I feel like poverty is it's a very individual mindset, because you're very focused on yourself. When you say I'm poor, it's very much an individualistic statement, saying this is me and this is my current state in comparison to other financial states. But I feel like there could be systems in place. And growing up in Africa myself, and growing up in the place where my classmates, were similar to the kids you see in commercials. But I feel like at the same time, you didn't have the stuff, like, I know what you're talking about, Courtney. Like, I've seen it with kids here. It's just, they're selfish, and they could be mean and they could be greedy, but like, we understand where that comes from. But just getting them to realize, and I guess operate with a sense of collective efficacy, I think that's the word. Understand that my situation is I'm not alone with my situation. We're all in the same boat. I'm saying we're all poor, so we all need to uplift each other. I feel like that's the difference I see growing up in Africa and growing up with people who are poor in Africa. I feel like there was more of a let's work together and let's you didn't study for the test because you're hungry, something like that. I cheated, I have the answers. I'll help you cheat. Just little things like that, to where we're all operating on the same. Yeah, we're poor. There's poverty. We have a sense of culture. We are one people. Let's make money together, not I'm poor and I need to make money. And so have your grades and definitely get to the top. If I'm making any sense.
No, I got that.
Yeah.
Y'all mind if I read this to you?
Yeah.
All right, so it says, I went ahead and got the book. It's if anybody wants it, it's Zen Teachings on the Taoist Classic. I don't know if y'all ever want to check this out, but I love it. But not to esteem sagacity. Side note, I don't say sagacity a lot. Is that the way you say that?
I think so.
All right, cool. All right, so not to esteem sagacity causes the people not to compete. Not to value hard to get goods causes the people not to steal. Not seeing anything to desire makes the mind undisturbed. Therefore, the government of sages empties the mind and fills the belly, weakens the ambition and strengthens the bones, always making people innocent and desireless, making the sophisticated not dare to contrive, act without contrivance, and all will be orderly. Y'all kind of get how that correlates to what we're saying?
Kinda. I probably need to see it in front of me and define some of the words for real.
Could we recite it?
Recite it?
Yeah.
All right. Not to esteem sagacity.
Can you say this in AAVE or something? Can you translate it to black?
Oh,
I can't
okay.
understand. And I'm gonna keep it 100. I don't know what the hell you're saying.
I got to switch laptops real quick, but
Okay.
I'll be back.
All right, so essentially, from the way I'm taking this, when it says don't esteem sagacity, don't why even give shrewdness any clout? Like, why are you giving that clout? If you don't esteem it, then it causes people not to compete. So if I don't have a desire to get some clout, then I'm not gonna desire to look like that person that has these material things that make people think that they have clout. So I'm not gonna want that if I don't esteem that, Not to value hard to get goods because causes the people not to steal. Yeah, I mean, shoot, a Bugatti is hard to get. People, Akon, I don't know how much I know about Akon, but I know at one point when he was younger, he was like boosting cars. He was stealing cars and stuff. That's how he originally got locked up. And if I don't value those goods, I'm not gonna want to steal it. Not seeing anything to desire makes the mind undisturbed. So again, going back to if I don't have that type of desire, then I'm gonna be cool sharing that. My mind isn't gonna be disturbed if I don't have the desire to just hold on to it, to keep it to myself, or creating that desire of this material is God, like this material is gold, like it's what I want and whatever I need. Therefore, the government of sages empties the mind and fills the belly, weakens the ambition and strengthens the bones. That part right there, I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna have to go through. It says that weakening means being humble without conceit. Strengthening is because of filling the belly. Is it says it's by emptying the mind and weakening ambition, you make it so there's nothing to know. Desireless should be viewed in reference to filling the belly and strengthening the bones. So I guess that's basically saying when you fill the belly and strengthen the bones, and it makes you desireless in a sense. Always making people innocent and desireless, making the sophisticated not dare to contrive, act without contrivance, and all will be well. So, again, this whole book's really about trying to find the way, which it's my, in my opinion, it's like the Asian version of some Afrocentric type of like ideals, even though Afrocentric ideology includes Asian culture. So it technically is in that same field.
What did that mean at the end where you were saying contrivance?
Contrivance? Let me put,
what does that mean? Do you know?
In the book, it said act without contrivance means that everything would be in order if all were done without artificiality. That notion is as expressed above. Some say this chapter illustrates taking care of life. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
I like Taoism. They got some good stuff in there for sure.
Oh, you read this? You read his stuff before?
I haven't read that, but I've read some of.
Courtney, you got to get on the Taoism wave.
I know it's extra books. We talked about this.
Nah, yeah, I know. You got.
I am. Just give me a year and a PhD and a Black curriculum, and then I'm gonna read.
It's hard to read while you're in school when you already got other stuff forced to read, you know.
Yeah.
I fully relate. So, man.
I have a question. Before you ask the question, hold on.
Okay.
So capitalism breeds consumerism, which disproportionately, I guess, attacks people of color and women. Like just talking about like makeup, Jordan, shoes, whatever. We're trying to, just like in that book, we're trying to live up to a standard. My question, it was a good one. It'll come back to me. Go ahead, Zach.
Take your time.
Well, I was gonna say, what do y'all think of that, going back to the whole thing of where capitalism is strong, culture is at its weakest, or he said that's what he said, right? At its weakest. Mm-hmm. And creating that culture of poverty, like how do y'all think this relates? How can you get to something like what this is trying to say in that, relating to that?
Okay. This goes, okay, now I remember, and it kind of ties in. So when we were talking about having this set amount of money for people's basic needs, and how that would work out for everybody, don't you think that it wouldn't work out because some people are stuck in this consumer capitalism mindset? They're going to spend money on things to make them look good, while other people are going to spend money on things that are actually on their basic needs. So we can say everybody's going to have the same amount of money, equal access to the opportunities, but the way that they decide to spend that money is still going to perpetuate this same system.
Very real. I think people's value systems are definitely going to have to change.
Yeah.
I took a class about colonialism and missionaries in Africa. So early missionaries in South Africa. And they talked about one of the ways that they had to make Christianity evident and appealing to the traditional like to the tribal people in Africa, so the Zulus specifically I'm talking about. And one of the ways they did that was by introducing capitalism. So it's one thing to colonize a group of people physically, but capitalism is one way they capitalize these people consciously. So they made the things that they had more appealing. They introduced the concept of owning something, like this is something that we have that y'all don't have access to. And all of that just really has, I guess they use that as a mechanism to draw people in to missionary work, but also it led to them, it paved the way for colonization and British imperialism later down the line. But I just think that's really interesting because capitalism is a way in which, like, along with capitalism, you kind of have to change your whole value set to something different. Like, you value the things that are expensive in life now. Now you value the things that are maybe going to make you money, or, you know, so I'm not sure. I actually kind of got away from the question.
I feel like oh, there we go. Courtney, you mind asking your question again?
The question is, do I remember the question?
Dang, I was trying to get accurate.
I think I asked, how did we think equity and, you know, providing for people's basic needs was going to be successful if people's mindsets are not in the right place? I think that
you were saying the consumerism causing the values to be on the
there you go.
like, I guess the thing, the material, the consumption, whatever. Like, so basically, we're trying to figure out how we can fix somebody. We have to break somebody's founding principles and switch it all around and say, look, you don't need this car, or you don't need that shirt. Is that what basically that's what we're trying to figure out? How can we switch values? How can we learn, or how can we adjust people's values?
Yeah, that's the core of it, because I think that would solve a lot of problems. A lot of the issues that we talked about today, if we could just change people's view and their principles, a lot of this wouldn't be an issue.
But people need things to spend their money on, though.
What was that?
I said, but people need things to spend their money on, though. Like, if I can't afford the car, I mean, how can you tell me not to get it? If I can afford another one, and I like the other one, I'll get the other one too. And if I can afford the house here, I'm gonna get that. And if I can afford the house over there, I'm gonna get that one too. I mean, it's just a matter of because I can. And I feel like that's been America's attitude from the get, you know, or the West's attitude from the get, because I can, you know.
I agree.
I have the money and I have the capital to do it. I can go for those human beings on that continent because I can. You know, there's no question of morality. There's no morals. There's no, you know, is this good? Is this bad? It's just because I can. I'm buying the car not thinking about whether or not I'm polluting the environment with gases or whatnot. I don't know, but like all that type of stuff. I'm not thinking about that. You know, buying the house, not thinking about whether the house is built on native land or nothing like that. I like the house. I like the location. So I feel like that's, yeah, when you talk about morality, it goes back to, I mean, what morals was this country founded on? None. Right. It's founded on capitalism. Do it because you can, if you can.
I think that going back to, I think Jalen made me think of this earlier. Like, how do I get somebody to not think selfishly or something like that? And it's kind of weird because all the what you would like to see is people to have a sense of urgency on the bigger things in life, on like how I think it was like a whole iceberg that melted last year, or it melted down, like, and they had like or some, I don't know if y'all kept up with it, but it was something that melted last year, and it was like this. It used to be a big iceberg, and now it's like almost gone, or it is gone. They even put like a little monument up there, and it had something on it saying something. I'm paraphrasing, but it says something about like this spot right here used to be this. We don't know where the future will be, and that's like but if you read, it's talking to the person in the future, saying you'll know if we did the right thing or not by like if you're still reading this, like, you know. And I think that like all of the bigger picture things are too slow. Again, going back to like self-development, like those books and everything where it talks about like all the great things that you really want take a long time to get. Like I think one of my quotes, like the easy road brings nothing but hard times. So essentially capitalism just goes to the easy route. Again, like somebody's always trying to break off of somebody else's labor. It's taking an easier route to get there. So, but however, taking that easier route makes all the bigger things in life that takes a lot, like it's a slower route, it's probably more strenuous. Most owners, like it's that's what we're getting away from. And like if you can get somebody to have some type of sense of urgency on those bigger things, like understanding that this still affects you, and if not you, your kids, and do you actually love your kids then? If you actually like, who do you love? You know, like, do you really, what do you love? Because I feel, for me personally, I feel as though off of basic science, I believe where energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transferred. I don't know where like my personal spirit energy will be headed to, but I know one thing, like if I personally was reincarnated, I'd be scared because I don't want to come back to a world that is basically dying. Like we are killing our earth, we're killing our people, everything is just dying. And I feel like if you had some way to create some type of empathy, compassion with a sense of urgency, then you could create some type of culture that has different values if you start that from day one. Like I was talking to a coworker and I was telling her I think humanity should be the main thing taught in elementary school. Like that should be your grounded surface, because there's like studies where like you don't even have to really teach a kid math until like maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and they can still catch up to what would have been if you would have started them in like kindergarten. So like there's certain subjects that could be sacrificed or moved around, like how we're talking about defunding, which is really reallocating. Like I think we could reallocate students' time or our children's time and what they learn, because if you actually just learned humanities, not just looked at history or looked at like our social dynamics, our social environments and whatnot, with just history and dates or terms and definitions, and you actually learn the lessons from those historical moments and what those terms actually, how they relate to you in your life. And I feel like you could create that. That should be a very elementary thing, you know, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, so this makes me wonder, like, so we kind of agree that capitalism in America doesn't provide a favorable outcome, like kind of no matter how we shape it. So do we invest, this that comes back to the same conversation, do we invest time in like reforming and trying to change people in the system, or like what's next? Like how do we do we just live in it and just try to make it as best as it can be, or
Well, you die. We're dying. So If somebody then I don't think they want to live in it or live with it.
Yeah.
But can we really escape it though? You know?
I mean, it is what it means to be an American. So, I mean, it is America for you. People literally give up everything to come here to experience it, to be a part of this race to Lord knows where. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just living it to make the best of it.
If I relate, my bad.
Nah,
well, I was gonna say, if I related to our last conversation, then I would have to say that you would, if you guys want to live with it, then that means we have to invest in it. And that's again going back to investing in our own oppression, trying to figure out to win the game. So like that's the total different strategy then. If I choose to live with it, then that means I definitely have to have everybody on the same team at that. I definitely need everybody's mind understanding what we're doing henceforth, because at that point, if I live with it, then we are declaring war. Maybe not physical war, but politics.
Basically,
it could be
war, but yeah, like you're saying, it's basically war though. Like we're on the losing side and we trying to win now. Like
exactly, and then that takes me to some things that are very contradictive with our polarized system, Democrats and Republicans, because a lot of Black Republicans, they like to say, look at Planned Parenthood, and they're always like, yo, this is the number one killer of black babies and everything. They like to say that, and you look at our population and you think, dang, we used to be the majority in a lot of these southern states, or close to. And we used to have a higher percentage, but now we're at 12, 14. We're hovering around there. How'd that happen? So then it goes back to Ashley and Kenny's conversation earlier with jail or prison and dead. So then it's like, okay, contradiction right there with the Republicans. Then that means I need to reform these prisons because I want my people out of them. So it's kind of like I feel like you have to take some again and going back to maybe creating your own party, creating your own thing, because it wasn't always just two. I know Kanye's making his birthday party. I don't think it's great. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's the move. But
that what he's doing? He's creating his own party called Birthday Party.
That's what was
Birthday party.
Yeah, that's what was reported, bro.
Well, exactly like create your own party. Cordy, you shook your head. You said no.
It doesn't work. The system is built off of Republican and Democrat. There have been other parties, but what are the main parties standing?
You said what?
Democrat.
Yeah. So to make another party, the same thing that Kanye's doing, and people don't stand by it because he's going to split the vote.
Mm-hmm. You're
saying do the exact same thing, but just put it under your values, but it's going to do the exact same thing that Kanye is doing.
Okay. Well, my thing is, I believe that I kind of touched on this with Agwar at one point, but I think that each community could have their own party. However, put them. I don't know how this would work. I need some more people I need another think tank. I need some more people thinking on this with me. But I believe if each community had their own party, you could do something with that.
So is there like a Black person or a Latino person or a white person that gets elected, or like how are we doing this?
It could, well, not even just based off of race, although race is one of the longest one. Well, I don't know. Race and sexism are hand in hand, I guess. But I think that, again, I think I've had this conversation with y'all where, for instance, if you actually had like a legit black tax, not like the black tax with the book and everything, the seminar that I've seen, but like a tax that actually diverts it, that you actually want your money to go to. So, like, for instance, like if they've split federal and state taxes, why can't they split another section of that and say, okay, this tax is going to people that claim to be Latinx. This part of the tax is going to the Black community. This part of the tax is going to the Asian community or whatever, you know, like I feel like there's something that can work. However, this might sound backwards because it may sound like some type of system of separate but equal, but not separate but equal, if that makes sense. Like I'm just trying to think very differently than what we have right now. I'm trying to use.
I don't know. Yeah, we talked about it before. You had mentioned it to me. I don't know if I can agree with it because I feel like basically, I mean, I don't think you have it set in place like this is the plan. You're still just brainstorming, but sort of what I'm getting from it is just we have our own party, which is a lot of part of the philosophy of the Panthers Party and everything. We take care of our own. We have our own political party, and all minorities sort of have their own communal party. But I feel like that adds to white people are going to be like, well, then shit, this is our own, the Democratic and Republican Party, that's our own party. And I feel like you have to work with the people who are in power, because they're still going to be the majority. And I mean, after them, I mean, it's expected that it's going to be a minority majority with Latinx people being the majority in this country. But even then, we will still be under Latinx control. I feel like it won't be resolving any underlying issues with like racism or ethnocentrism because we'll just be in factions. I feel like the conversation we should be having is, yeah, I identify as a Democrat or a Republican, but I still want my people's oppression to be a part of this political agenda. Not that I should have to create my own political faction, because that will never benefit me in a system that was created by y'all. See if that makes any sense.
I get it. I'm not exact. Again, I don't know, the power of the imagination, man. I think that this is a country built off of somebody's imagination. So I mean, again, this country's only been here 300 years, 300 something years. Every civilization has fallen at some point. Like who gives these people the power? We do. Like who gives them the power to oppress us? I mean, yes, they have their own systems, but we do contribute to that in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like we give them that power. We just haven't found out the way to stop that oppression. Like we've done the same things. Like, man, the more I read historical stuff, I'm like, dang, they did this back then. Like, oh dang, WB.
It's an old game.
Or dang, Frederick Douglass already said that. Like, dang, these people already said, like, this has already been said. So it's like, I don't believe you can continue to live with what we have because it's been said already. Like, it's like again, going back to what Ashley was saying with right now, everybody's on your devices. So all you get to see is the problems going on in the world since all the entertainment is gone. I think the entertainment, again, Ray Higgins, he put me on to the game. Again, entertainment is just a synonym for amusement, and amusement just means not to think. So muse means to think. So I mean, essentially, entertainment is just trying to get you to not think. And if schools are not teaching us how to think, but telling us what to think, training us to work for the people that can think, like taking that imagination from us, then we must try to imagine. Like we must try to attempt to imagine, and actually think thoroughly with a thorough analysis of what exactly we're going through, which is why I really love going back in history, because it's like, again, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work, and here we are. So what are we doing next? Because it's just a matter of we've been trained not to think of what to do next, in my mind. And I think, again, maybe not even just, again, like you said, I'm just in the brainstorming thoughts, but if you actually have somebody with each party, maybe why can't we have a parliament here? Why can't we have something where we do have representatives for each community of something, like creating it where everybody does have a voice, And you create some system where you make those people feel like they are in a just society, not necessarily just an inclusive society, not necessarily an equal society, an equitable, but a just society. You know, I don't think anybody's ever thought about this, like how to create this, since Plato, like since those great thinkers in the past that Kenny was talking about earlier. Like Adam Smith literally gave us what we have now, and that's been how long?
Nobody reconsidered.
Oh, this is actually crazy. Zach, we're actually talking today. You had asked me a question about like a video you had sent about a guy talking about matriarchy in Africa and how everything is equal. I don't think you saw my response to that, but I was like, I don't agree with the video, and my reason is pretty much very similar to what you're saying. I just thought about that because basically he's just saying that men, and what I got from it is him saying, and you could read my detailed explanation, men are egalitarian and they look out for women and they ask women about things before they make decisions. That's all bullshit. First off, there's no African culture, but I go into all that. Basically, but what I was saying is the women in these patriarchal societies, where by default they are oppressed, they are seen to be beneath men. They all have like groups. There are like groups, and if you look in every patriarchal African society, women create women's societies, and it's through these societies that they can, as a collective, be like, okay, the men are doing this, and if I by myself was to say I don't fuck with this, I could try, but it's not gonna go far. But as women, as part of this women's society, we can stand up and be like, yo, we're not doing this. And that's the main way that they get their voice, they get heard, they get their voice across, and pretty much the things that they desire, they get accomplished. So I just made a connection between what you're saying and us creating sort of our own political faction, and basically the work that these women do in their societies where, you know, they're not heard, but through organization and mobilization, they can actually get the agenda across. So I see where you're thinking is that it's just a matter of how. I mean, how to get people organized, who to organize.
Organize. That's Kwame Terry's thing. Organize, man. Organize. And they I think it was like a quote they say is like, man, they're just more organized than us. That's just it. Like our oppressors are just more. That's really it.
They're clean with it. You don't even realize until it's too late.
Exactly. and it's like, dang, you thought that you had them. You thought you had them, and then like you got your little step, you know. But then they start making their. I think Kenny Mack might have mentioned that before as well. Like, it's also in this Black Power book where it's just like every time you think that you've made some type of progress, they just get sneakier and sneakier with it. Like you think that you've exploited not exploited, but debunked the racism. Like you've got it out there, you've shown it to the world and everything. But then it's like, let me just find another subtle way to do this. like how they took out words they knew was gonna sound racist in some of our like amendments and like you literally said like you said you're no more slavery. But in the end, you still said, yeah, that's still slavery. Like if you really unpack the 13th Amendment, so you just found different ways to make it subtle, and I definitely see that, man. I was like, dang, you think you're getting that step? It's like, damn.
It goes back to Coach saying, so who are the people? They speak of the people, but they don't really, explain who the people are. So it's those subtle things where hardly in American histories, it's said, these people are the filth of the earth. These people are gonna, work the plantations and all that stuff. I find it almost kind of cool how the Constitution, the founders did that, because they rarely mention this abomination, but they work through it. Like it's everywhere, it's in everything, but they don't speak on it. So it's so and you see their descendants today, all arguments basically for racism, for subtle racism, will go back to, well, the Constitution wasn't racist because the Constitution didn't say this, the Constitution didn't say that. But the Constitution did subtly say a lot of, is the greatest document of hate speech, you know, and it's just, the N word's not mentioned once in it. Black people are not mentioned once in it, but the document says, you know, we're gonna work. Basically says, you know, to each their own with the slaves. Like if you work really hard, the more slaves you're gonna have, and good luck to you. It's all that the Constitution reads to it. So it's just kind of funny how that works.
You make me think we in the Hunger Games, bro. Good luck to you, like. And what do they say? What does they say in the Hunger Games when it starts?
May the odds forever be in your favor.
Yeah.
That's it, right? That's it.
Yeah.
That's all this.
Hunger Game.
And here we are now, like late to the fucking Hunger Games and shit. I can't remember how the movie or the whatever goes, but it's like the goal has already been somebody, whoever we're chasing or whatever goal we're trying to accomplish, they beat us to it. So I mean, it's possible to win the race. Are we playing to win? This is a survival game.
I think right now it's survival. Courtney, were you about to speak?
I was asking, in the Hunger Games, don't they say eat the rich? Because I feel like all this imagining a world, blah, 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 we're just working within the system. Why don't we just eat the rich, kill the system? In history, people overthrow the government. They don't just overthrow it by saying, hey, you know, we organize, we occupy. They was killing people. So like, you know, I can't say, you know, let's, but how are we gonna kill the system? By destroying the people who perpetuate the system. Once they're gone, we can rebuild, figure it out.
Yeah.
So we just gotta wait till they all die off.
But that's what we've been doing. They don't die, they just multiply.
But I was gonna relay that back to Kennedy, what you were saying, Zach, and I say this all the time, but it says every step of racial progress has been followed with racist progress. And once you at one form of racism, it just shape shifts and they figure out how to play it out in different ways, in different forms.
Wow.
It's I think one thing that Amos Wilson mentioned in the book, it was like, I think he said power is ambiguous. And essentially that's what we're talking about at the end of the day. It's like power. We're always really talking about power at the end of the day. But he was like, it's ambiguous, and saying how like it's got more meanings, different meanings and everything. And I felt like when I read that, I was like, oh, well, racism is like that too. It's ambiguous too. Like it's both of them are ambiguous, and I see them as like, again, one of my favorite things. I know everybody knows this, but one of my favorite things, like, be like water. You know, like racism and power is very much like water. It'll take any form in any position, and what it could be. It could be super powerful. It can be calm. It can manipulate, or it can be what manipulates. Yeah. You know, like it's. You just made me think of that because you were saying it just gets more racist oppression. I mean, more racist progress, and it's like it just continues to move like water. It can't go away. It's just
that's a big thing. It can't be destroyed. And with racism, like you can't eradicate the idea, because the idea is constantly morphing, and you can't kill an ideology. You know, we can't go out and kill Islamic terrorism by shooting a couple of terrorists. I mean, dude taught his son the same philosophy before he died. So it's just like it moves. It can't be killed off with one person. But that's a hard lesson, I feel like, for us to learn. Just understanding that racism morphs, and it's not. You can't play the game. The game is not. It's not in your favor. It wasn't designed to be in your favor. So you trying to keep up. It's like the system. It's not for you. And I feel like that lesson is to really understand what that lesson looks like, you have to look at Africa, because the entire history of Africa is literally people thinking that they can keep up with a very alien, very cruel game that put us where we are today. So that's my spiel.
I guess before we end, at least before what I wanted to say this. I know y'all probably heard it before, but I've been telling people this a lot lately. I forget even where I got it from. But I'm just realizing like how we're going back to capitalism, and it's I think the quote was like, capitalism is just socialism for the rich. It's like see all these corporations, these big companies, they get bailouts, billions of dollars, and what do we get? $1,000. Like, you know, capitalism really is just socialism for the rich, and that's just how it's always been. And I think that that's something that just continues to move as well. Like I feel like they go hand in hand. Like we may be saying we're fighting capitalism, but we're really just fighting a different version of socialism. Like, we're just fighting a rich version of socialism that we're not a part of. Like we're already in two games going on right now. Again, like we're really playing the capitalistic game. They're playing the socialist game. Like
they don't know what you got going on down there.
Exactly. It's very weird because we've lived through 2 recessions now, like 2, and both times those $1 billion companies got bailouts. They got the welfare, and they want to say the individuals are the quote unquote welfare queens. If I'm going back to Nixon, you know, like you want to say the individuals are the problem. In reality, like why can't these companies just fall? What was wrong with all those companies, those car companies back in 2007, 2008 that failed? Like, why did we have to give them money? Why couldn't they just fall like every other great empire and let another one come in? They didn't give a chance for any of us to participate in any type of mercantilism, in a sense. Like we didn't be able to become merchants in that industry, you know, because they won't let them fall. They won't let them fail. So again, and essentially welfare is like trying to make sure you're not failing at the very least. So it's like these companies have their very least marker for them, but they don't really give us something like that. You know, we don't get that same opportunity.
I've appreciated it. Glad meeting all y'all, but I gotta study, so bye.
Thanks, Courtney.
Bye.
Did y'all have any thoughts on that?
Can you say that last part again where you asked the question?
I didn't have a question. I was just really like, well, I did just now ask if y'all have any thoughts, but I was just saying like we didn't get a chance at creating those companies they won't let fail. Like every great thing has fallen at some point, and they just found a way to make sure that they can't fail. Like even if you do fail, some other company's about to buy you out. Like, it's not even like you really fail. You just got bought out by another company. So you just get big. They just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they never let them fail when the economy falls. While we get to fail as individuals, like causing all sorts of problems. Like if I'm just taking it all the way back to like the Depression, and when that happened, and all them people were killing themselves, like suicide, just because of money. Are we willing to go towards that again? Like why can't we have some type of system where they can fail, but it also gives us the opportunity to exceed? Like it gives us the chance to not fail ourselves. Like shoot, if Ford falls, well shoot, why can't we have some Eno cars?
We just need shit. They can print money for them. They need to print money for us, man. That's how I feel. They can give millions or billions of dollars, trillions of dollars away. I feel like they should be able to do that for the people. But like Admiral was saying, we're not really the people that they're concerned about, man.
Right. Fun fact: one of my coworkers was actually in the military previously, and he said when he was sworn in, he said he does not remember swearing to the people. He does not remember the people being in the words that he had to say to be sworn in.
So what was he swearing to?
Huh?
What was he swearing to then?
Exactly. Like me and we're just talking, and they were like, they were supposed to be like serve and protect with the police, but you know, like military is supposed to be keeping us safe and protecting us and everything. But he said he didn't remember saying anything about the people when he got sworn in.
Just swear and protect America as a philosophy. You know, the very idea of America is what he's protecting. It's not about the people.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. You were saying basically why does America like love these corporations and whatnot? I feel like you have to look at the history of America. Like these corporations are what makes America America. Like they need that. It's like America's kids. I just had to look up some of their names, but like Carnegie, Rockefeller, like all these big names that Ford that really set up America and through their corporations, through the creation of these corporations, and made America the rich country it is today. So I feel like America owes America to to these corporations. So it's crazy because the country itself, in that sense, it really is not even free. Not free to protect its own people because it feels like there's this sort of connection between American corporations and let the people fall, but don't let the orgs fall, which is so twisted. But I mean that's a country we live in.
Different values, man. Messed up values. But
well, I think this might be a good place to end it off at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anything ending that y'all want to leave off with?
Yeah.
Now go ahead, Albert.
Now, like I was saying, I feel like the big thing I got towards the end of this conversation was just like look at Africa. I feel like Africa is just a perfect example of people who try to play capitalist game, African cultures and civilizations that pretty much welcomed white people from the get and said, you know, we're powerful and y'all just pulled up on the shore with y'all's little boat asking for slaves and we'll help y'all get slaves. Y'all gonna give us this and that in exchange, but then y'all gonna go away. But it didn't work out that way. We played the game and we thought, you know, all these chiefs and kings thought they were something. And white people, when they sent Africans out to steal from all the different other tribes and steal people, Africans thinking that slavery was being practiced in the U.S. the same way it was being practiced in Africa were cool with it. And so from the get, I feel like we played into a game that was not meant for us. And it got to a certain point where the next time the white people showed up, and you look around, it's like your neighbors are all gone because you stole all of them. They said, "Oh shit! Well, pull out the guns. We want your people. We want you. You get your ass on the ship." So I feel like that's exactly what happens to a people who try to play a game that was not meant for them. And you have Africa suddenly this super poor continent, and when you read about Africa in the books, like before colonization, it was this rich, prosperous place, and gold and all this shit. It's like, where's the riches? The gold and all that stuff is still there. Yeah. The people are poor because we've had a history of poor leaders. People who tried to play the game that was never meant to be played. From the get, it should have just been, leave us alone. We have a system that works for us. I can't define what that system was. I don't know what that system was, but it worked. But we don't have that anymore. Now we're trying to, you know, build a conversation around surviving the system that's just is strange. Capitalism is fucking weird, but it's a norm. You know, you can't imagine life without it. So that's a major take I got from that.
I think my major take was actually your quote, bro. Like, can you say that one more time, bro? Like,
Our culture. Oh, capitalism is strong where culture is weak. Something along those lines. Yep.
I love that, man. That's a quote of the day for me, man.
Mhm.
All right. I guess we.
All right, y'all. Yeah.
Well, we didn't get your last word, bro.
You
What'd you
said
say?
what?
I don't think we got. I don't want to mess up your name, Joabu.
Oh, yeah. So my summary, the conversation really just has me thinking about capitalism and is this a game I want to play myself? Is this a game that we can win? Is this a game we can change the rules of? And if we don't change the rules of this game, and let's say we choose not to play, how does that look? Is that possible? What does that look like for us? We don't do it here. So that the conversation has me thinking of that ways, because I think I haven't done much reading on capitalism and how it intersects with race and class, but I think just from our conversations, I can conclude that capitalism ain't it for real. So I guess for me, this conversation just has me thinking about, okay, let's say I move to Ghana. Do I fall into the same system of capitalism? Or like, what's my future look like? What's my future relationship look like with capitalism?
That's a good question.
Yep.
That's what I'm afraid of, man. You go over to some country in Africa and you realize, like, fuck, they here too. like,
Yeah.
like it's right here too.
But
Yeah, you can't hear from capitalism. That boy he's everywhere.
it's
So-
gonna be different problems with it in different places,
Yep.
So just real quick, last question.
Yeah.
To play the game or not to play the game?
You gotta play the game to some extent. Right now we're in the game.
Very the person
You
thing
play
to say, gotta play the game.
We don't have an option not to play the game right now. I can't just go live in the jungle and or in the forest. I don't got the know-how. Yeah, I would love to. I would do it too. But
I think again, I'm with y'all. I think you have to play the game. I think in the future we could have like an episode on that, like how could we play the game? I think a lot of there's books out there. Maybe one day when we actually go to like a section, a season that we have about like how to win the power game. How do you win the economic?
and I think a lot of the answers is us coming together.
Yep.
Because we're forced to play the game, but we gotta. It's like this right now. We gotta get back up.
I think we have to play a socialistic capitalist game. I think
economics.
Yeah, I feel as though like, for like I said earlier, like that whatever that quote, wherever I got it from, capitalism is the socialism for the rich. And we need to play some type of capitalistic socialism for ourselves as a unit. Like we need to figure out some way to, if they're moving as a group in their way, they got each other's back. Then somehow we have to figure out how to be social within ourselves, but capitalist against.
Yeah. If we could completely remove ourselves out of their economy and just have our own black economy, then maybe that could work,
See, I think we've watched stuff where they've talked about that. How does that do? But I've seen videos where it talks about that, but I'm kind of wondering, like, how does that look too? Like that's been something that's been said before as well.
But they've always, and it's happened before, but they've always destroyed it. So I mean, the idea of black people owning our own economy it's not new, but it's always historically been destroyed. To where today we don't have any examples of a black economy that really functions, and you can't look to Africa for an example. Yeah. So we are examples of it.
Well, I guess that leaves us for a conversation another time.
Yeah. Let's think about the future.
Next Wednesday, it's the Wednesday thing.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Yeah.
All right, bet.
All right. Likes, comment, or whatever. If you
I'll
want.
be getting that this thing.
All right, yo.
Zach, I appreciate you inviting me, bro.
No doubt. Anytime.
Oh yeah, we love having you, man.
Take it easy.
I